Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antique Society tasting. Tonight I'm going to look at another lost distillery, this time grain distillery, Cambus Distillery, and I have a sample, a 3CL sample of Cambus from the whisky situation. It's a Scottish Malt Whisky Society single cask G8.25 Cosy Up Coorie Doon Snuggleicious Cambus 1990 32-year-old bottled at 56.3%. So I've just poured it to let it settle in the glass for a little while there. So Cambus Distillery was another of the lowland grain distilleries that formed the basis of DCL in the late 19th century and played a starring role in the establishment of grain spirit as whisky, although it did start out distilling malt. In 1806, John Mowbray, Moubray, converted a disused mill in Alloa, situated on the banks of the River Devon, close to where it meets the Forth. And he converted that disused mill into a malt distillery, and it operated as a small plant until 1863, when Mowbray took a change in direction, installing two Stein patent stills to distill grain whisky instead. And Cambus was run as a family business for most of the 19th century, passing down to John's son James and grandson Robert, who installed a coffee still in 1851. And that expansion cemented Cambus as one of the largest grain distilleries in Scotland. Its buildings were spread over 8 acres, and railway sidings were built up to each warehouse. In 1856, to safeguard future operations, during a period of fluctuating demand for grain whisky, 6 of the largest grain distillers in the Lowlands agreed to divide up the market between them for a year, with Cambus allocated 10.5%. Cambus also entered into a similar agreement in 1865, this time with the addition of Adelphi, Yoker, Cameron Bridge and Port Dundas distilleries. And in 1877 it became one of the founding companies of DCL, which went on to acquire the adjacent Cambus Old Brewery in 1882 to allow Cambus to expand further. During the What is Whisky trials at the turn of the century, when malt distillers began an uprising against the use of the term whisky to describe grain spirit, DCL, which operated several grain distilleries, used Cambus to sway public opinion in their favour. In 1906, it placed a front page advertisement for Cambus pure grain whisky, which had been aged for around 7 years, in the Daily Mail, to give the public the opportunity of judging for themselves what a pure, patent, still grain whisky was like. It was an obvious publicity ploy to sway the public and the deciding courts. The malt distillers lost, and after the ruling had been announced in the 1908 Royal Commission, the advertising was quietly withdrawn. Following its moment in the limelight, Cambus fell on hard times when a fire destroyed most of the distillery in 1914, rendering the site shut for the next 23 years. It eventually reopened in 1937, but shut again during World War II. Finally, at the end of the war, DCL began a period of investment in the site. A gin rectification plant was installed in 1952, while a CO2 processing plant went in the following year. In 1964, Cambus became the first distillery to have a byproducts plant, which was later expanded into a full dark grains plant in 1982, after DCL acquired the closed North of Scotland grain distillery next door. Cambus eventually closed in 1993 as part of Diageo's £100 million production reorganisation. Its plant was removed and the site transformed into a cask filling operation and warehouses. In 2011, it began a new lease of life as Diageo built a new £9 million cooperage on site, transferring the coopering operations from nearby Carsbridge and Dundas Hill in Glasgow. It now adjoins the giant Blackgrange warehousing complex. In its heyday, Cambus's whisky was highly regarded by blenders, and the advertisement placed by DCL in the Daily Mail in 1906 described Cambus pure grain whisky as the whisky with an individuality, notably different to all others in peculiar delicacy and charm of flavour. Mild and mellow, not a headache in a gallon. So, what have we got here then? So this is the Scottish Malt Whisky Society bottling G25, G8.25 rather. Cosy Up, Coorie Doon, Snuggleicious, Cambus 1990, 32-year-old at 56.3%. Distilled on the 18th of June 1990 and fully matured for 32 years in a first fill bourbon barrel before bottling in 2023, producing 231 bottles. So let's see what we have. It's quite a thin tide line and not terribly viscous. Yeah, there's some nice tears. They're quite slow running tears. And on the nose, you definitely get the grain. But there's a propensity of pears, a poverty of peppercorns. So more fruity, I think, really, rather than spicy. And that's quickly superseded by the sort of chocolate flakes that you get in ice cream cones. A sort of maple pecan Danish, caramel, coffee cake, and chocolate icing on sticky buns. And there's warm spices with a subtle sweetness. Then it moves back to a more herbal, rather more austere style. Sour fruits, white cherries, and that sort of fresh mown lawns. Licorice wood, broken branches, and a little charcoal. We'll try them out. And you do get caresses of candied ginger and kisses of caramel, apple, granny cake, and a sort of embrace of Mejdul dates. It is a cosy up, Coorie Doon, Snuggleicious wee dram. And there's a symphony of spiciness balanced by those sweet undertones. And it's rather like a ready-made Cuban mojito. Rum, lime and mint, but no soda water. It is particularly citrusy. And I think there's a sort of hint of limoncello there too. And the finishes of cinnamon, licorice and oak, sweet white chocolate and sweet maize. I'm going to try 1.5 mil of water in this one. Actually, I added 2 mils of water. And there's some nice symmetry going on there. Not as much as you would get in a cask strength malt, but certainly there is some. I've tried a few grains. It's not my favourite spirit, I have to say, grain whisky. Let's see what we get on the nose. And immediately it's earthier. You get clove studied oranges, star anise, gingerbread, and then cinder toffee, the kind of toffee you get in the middle of a crunchy bar. And it's an antique writing desk. Sweet spirit, that honeycomb, caramel, toffee and digestive biscuits. And there's sweet maize, chocolate, nugget, fudge, and then the back end there's some you get hay and dried herbs. We'll try them out. It's quite funky. Brandy soaked prunes, some coffee grounds, buttered popcorn. It's a medium dry sherry and a dark chocolate. Brown sugar, caramel and toffee. It mirrors the nose a bit, the palate. It's gentle, sweet with more coconut and nugget. And the finish is long and satisfying with lingering warmth, more American character. And there's nice lemony touches in the aftertaste with a little bit of ginger. So, old grain, what's not to love? And this is a lovely old grain with lots of rich sweetness. It's maybe a bit one note, as I do find a lot of grains to be, but this one's a bit more complex, I think, than that. And it's not been pumped up by a lot of sherry or fresh American oak casks. So, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.